There's so much of the ick part of my story. It is such a big piece, and attempted to write my testimony down to even help. But when I started, I always wanted to start at the beginning, but felt like the details and the ick wasn't the important stuff. Where he is, he was there with me in it, and he has continued to walk me forward in it. As my husband loved to say, with a grin on his face, aren't you excited to see what God does next? Here I am, doing less in my own will, less in my own power, ready to hop in the passenger seat. I was born and raised, and my whole 30 years lived here in the Gainesville-Ava area. I am one of 12. Those siblings were and still are my world. I am third to the oldest. My mom was very distant. She loved having babies, but after they were weaned, she disconnected. And that happened even to me at 3 years old. I remember feeling very traumatized at being pushed away. So I spent many years, going from tantrums, bad behavior of different kinds, just wanting even a negative attention just to have something from my mom, only to never achieve it. My earliest memories of my biological dad was him sexually molesting me in the front seat of a pickup truck, and then he was gone. When my first stepdad came into my life at about 3-4 years old, he was very distant, didn't have any desire to connect, and so there was about 6 years of my life where I just stayed out of the way. Him and my mom didn't have a good relationship. There was lots of screaming and yelling. It was scary for a young child. The most peace I got was to become invisible. When their marriage fell apart, within a short amount of time, my second stepdad came into play. He showed me attention. He made me to believe that he loved me. He gave me gifts and special attentions, only to, within a year after he had married my mom, began to groom and sexually molest me as well. There were questions in my head of, surely this is just normal, but it didn't feel normal. It didn't feel right. It wasn't right, and it wasn't okay, and even he hid from what he was doing. I didn't feel I could go to my mom. My older sister had gone to her and tried to share some of those things with her, and was made a public spectacle to the rest of our family as someone who lied, couldn't be trusted, and had no loyalty for our family. That left me quiet. I endured that abuse from the age of 8 to 20. There are so many parts of those years that I don't even remember. They are blanked out, other than the joy of my siblings. I love them. They kept me going. When I was 15, both of my older siblings had run away from home. I stepped into the mom role of my youngest 7 siblings. I remember being 10 years old and holding my baby brother. It was my baby. The household I grew up in had an appearance of Christianity. We grew up in a messianic mindset. The parents were always right, but my only experience with a father was to be used, to stay quiet, to be afraid. When I was about 17, I became suicidal. The shame, the pain of existing was too much. I thoughtfully planned my demise. I was going to down a very large bottle of Tylenol pills and hope that it killed me, but I planned to do it in such a time that I had hours before anybody would find me. As I went to do it, I prayed and I asked God to give me something, give me one reason why I shouldn't. I heard his voice loud and clear and undeniable saying, because I love you. And that was enough for me. I had never been told that before in my life and actually believed it. I had been told I was loved, only to be used. Here was God in a moment where I had nothing to give, telling me he loved me. And that became worth living for. On the heels of that, he walked me through reading the story of the prodigal son. The father was watching from yet afar off because he was watching, because he was looking, he was waiting for the arrival of his child. And then when he saw him, he ran to him and fell on his neck and kissed him. That painted all the picture that I needed to know and believe and have faith in who was carrying me through the rest of my life. During our growing up, we didn't have a lot of friends, didn't have a lot of people in our life. Of course, due to the secret things that went on in our home, people weren't allowed to come in to see our vulnerabilities in our home. 2016, so I would have been 20 at the time, we came across a church family that my parents thought that this group was the best thing ever. And of course, us kids did too, because we finally had people, we had friends. We were able to grow relationships with people outside of our home. In this place, I met the man that would become my husband. Within 3 months of going there, I felt conviction that if I was hoping and planning to step into a relationship with David in the future, I had to stand up and I had to put a stop to the abuse that I was still at that time enduring. There was a conversation where I was able to be strong with a strength that was not my own and tell my stepdad that he was never to touch me again. It was a long road of healing, finding the strength to forgive myself. What I felt was being in agreement with these horrible things. As I was being courted by my husband, there were so many different mixed feelings in that of the joy and the hope of the future, and yet having this dark mess in my wake, but not too far behind in my wake. It was only 6 months between the end of the abuse and becoming engaged to my husband. For the first time in my life, I felt like there was hope in a future. The wilderness is behind me. I'm moving forward, and I can just leave it all behind me, look into the beauty of what is to come. But through the process of our courtship, my parents did everything in their power to separate us. Being that we were both 21 at the time, we became bold and went ahead with our plans and got married. In choosing to get married, we were excommunicated from our entire church family and nearly the entirety of both of our families, all of mine and all but a sibling, his sister, stood by us. Once again, in the wake of the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me, I lost everything. Having grown up in a home that we were so secluded, we were so isolated from everything. My siblings were my world. My church was the only other group that I had relationships with. In a moment, we lost it all. That led me down a dark path, depression, and newlywed life by myself. I will never forget the day that I told my husband what had happened. My mom had made me promise that I wouldn't tell him, that I would keep that a secret, that he didn't need to know. And yet, on our honeymoon, best time ever to share the dirtiest things that have ever happened to you. We're driving down a highway across the western side of the country. I had to tell him, but in that moment, I'm thinking this is it. All the good that we have experienced for the last 2 weeks of our marriage, it ends now because he cannot love me after he knows what has happened to me. How could he possibly forgive? But I chose to be honest with him, and I told him everything. Once I was finished, he went silent, flips on his blinker to pull off on the side of a 4-lane highway. And once he was parked, he pulled me into his seat and cradled me like a baby. He said, "I am so sorry that someone would do that to you." He just held me. In that moment, I could even feel, see, experience God holding me. The creature that he knit together in my mother's womb, he was holding like a baby, saying, "I love you and I'm sorry that happened to you." I mean, as if none of it had ever happened. And I wanted to argue with him and go, no, you don't seem to understand. This was a shameful thing. And he's like, "But it's not yours." It was God through David showing me what it was like to be seen, be loved in the best, purest of ways, redeeming what I had gone through for 12 years. I was happy to be out of the abuse that I had endured and happily living in peace for the first time in my life, that I was indeed willing to forgive and forget and move on. Within months after we got married, I got a call from one of my siblings asking me to come to meet them. There were actually 2 of my siblings that showed up, and they both had told me that they also had been abused. I had to make a decision to go to the sheriff's department and make a report, which then led to my siblings being taken out of the home, put into foster care, where I wasn't allowed to see them at all for the next 2 years. That time also started the next 7 years of being in court and testifying as to horrible things that had happened. I knew that I could do it because God was with me and my husband was with me. What more did I need? But after only 14 very short months of marriage and one beautiful baby later, I lost David to a car accident very suddenly. All the questions of why had God taken me through my whole childhood, the childhood of turmoil, and then he had given me the gift of delivering me from that and given me the greatest joy of my life, my husband and my beautiful daughter, only to then lose it again. The loss was so bad. It was so much. It threw me into, yet again, depression. About 3 months after David died, I remember an evening, it was dark, it was raining, and Abby had been put down for the night. I screamed. I'd had enough. I felt like I had endured so much, in my opinion, been very faithful. What was this? He would take the gift that he had given me. I just screamed and screamed and screamed until I had nothing left to give. And I remember just falling on the floor in complete exhaustion. And once again, in that moment, I felt as if God wrapped himself around me and held me to himself. The most frustrating part of that whole conversation with God, I had expressed it, but I couldn't deny him. I'm even yelling, God, I can't even deny your existence. I don't even have the freedom to walk away, to deny that you loved me, that you had cared for me, that you had been there for me. Even in this moment where I felt so betrayed, I felt that he had space for me, for my anger, for me to feel and express the sorrow of all the things that I had endured, and I wasn't too much for him. What I had grown up to believe was sin, this behavior of just screaming at him, had to have been sin, and yet I never felt more loved than in that moment. And over the following months, I remember thinking, if I could just have a brand new pair of pajamas and a pack of socks, that would make my life so happy. But I wasn't about to tell anybody that, and I didn't want to be a burden on anyone. Then I got a call from these two very lovely ladies who said, hey, can you meet us, in the Walmart parking lot? We've got some stuff for you. When they opened up the back of that car, on top of this basket was a brand new pair of pajamas, an unopened bag of socks. The only message that I could receive from that was that I am seen and I am loved. No matter what, even though I'm walking through the very valley of the shadow of death, he was with me and he would carry me forward into being a single mom, now having to raise a daughter on my own and provide for my family, testify in court for the next 6 years by myself without the support of my husband sitting in the front row. Someone standing on the other side saying, good job, you did it. I had God's voice in my head saying the exact same things. After I was excommunicated from our church, in the wake of even losing my husband, because we had involved the law in the lives of my family, there was a large opinion that was wrong. It wasn't, biblical, and people wouldn't look at me. The people who months before had loved me, been my church family, would not even look at me and pretend that they didn't know me. The grief that came with that was so much, and it very much made me want to crawl in a hole. New people would move to the area, and depending on who they talked to and who I met them through, go to greet them and shake their hand and say, hi, my name is Katie Penn, and I would watch the blood drain from their face. The agony that ripped through my body in the betrayal, and I felt like my own name was a bad word. Having to live so long on my own to provide for myself, it has created a bit of a push and pull in letting God work in my life. I have had all the experience in my life that tells me that I can't depend on anyone. If there is good to be had, I have to be the one to create it. I have to be the one to push through and make it happen. Yet there's story after story after story of times where I have attempted to do that. It's almost humorous, but God will let me. And then I get brought back to a place of complete surrender where I'm just looking up and saying, hey, I can't. I've done all I can do, and I can't make it happen. If this is going to happen, or if this is your will, you're going to have to do the work. Those conversations in my head look a lot like, great, I am so glad you're ready to let me in. Let me be the God of your life. Not in a authoritative sort of a way, but in that gentle guide. He's not heavy-handed. He's not abusive. He will not have his way with me. He invites me into a submissive relationship with him. He wants the desires of my heart. He wants to walk through life with me as long as I'm wanting to walk through life with him as well. It sounds so cliche, but to say, since the death of my husband, God has become my best friend. Not because it's a fairy tale. Not because I always get what I want. Not because there has not ever been hardship since then. But I know that no matter what I face, no matter where I'm going or what grief I am going through, he is there. He is my provider as much as I like to believe I am. He is proud of me for my efforts as well. He gives me the strength to get up and do it. Then I come to a point of forgetting that it becomes heavy when I try to do it on my own. When I get bullish and push him away because I'm afraid that he will hurt me too. Only to remember where he has brought me through. Why would he want this tainted version of who I am? Only to receive the open arms, want to be there with me, want to help me. I felt led to add 2 bedrooms onto my house. Did I have the means to do it? No. Did I have any way of making that happen? No. But I felt like I was supposed to. I prayed about it, and I felt the clarity that I was supposed to do it. And so I hit the ground running to do everything physically possible to make that happen. He let me do that for about a month. Exactly. I come back to him, I'm like, I felt you told me this was what I was supposed to do, but I can't make it happen. So if it's not your will, take the burden from me. But if it is, you're gonna have to make it happen. It was as if he smiled and rolls up his sleeve. I had not discussed this with anybody, but as soon as I brought it back to him, he brought people who said, hey, I feel like I'm led to do this, that I'm supposed to help you financially in this way. And I'm just left there completely humbled, even a little shameful, of how I tried to even take something that I knew he wanted to do, to get out of his way and to let him work, and to simply be standing there saying, here I am. I'm a conduit. I am a vessel. That's all my earthly body can do. I have 2 bedrooms on my house that 2 of my siblings have been able to move in since then. Coming full circle back to even the joy of the worst time of my life, being a teenage mom to 7 children, to go through 2 years of not ever being able to see them, to being put back in a place where I can love on them and I can be the conduit to show them what God has shown me, to be his hands and feet and his voice in their lives as well, and to continue to watch the trickle down of the work that he has done in my life. After I had testified in court and my stepdad was convicted of the wrong that he had done, I, in prayer, had told God, I'm not ever talking about it again. I will move forward in my life without talking about, discussing anything that I shared from that seat as if it never happened. That will go in a box and I won't ever look at it again. And he challenged me on that. The scripture came to mind, by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. My testimony is not my own. It is his, the work that he has done in my life, and to hide away the things that have happened to me that weren't my fault, was not my shame, was to hide away the glory in the work that he has done in my life. From my teenage years to present day, God has used music to cradle my soul. In that same time frame where he's giving me peace in not hiding my testimony. The words of the song, I am who you say I am. I felt him redeeming my name, giving me the strength and the boldness to say, I am Katie Penn. This is who I am. And I am a daughter of the Most High God, and I am here because of the work that he has done, that he saved my life, that he has brought me here when too many times, too many areas would have been justified in taking my life. But he's brought me here because there's work to do. There's people to love. There's people who need to hear that they're not alone. I believed I was alone. I was going to take my life because I was alone, because there was not a person in my world who would understand what I had gone through, who would hear me and have love for me, because I was disgusting. And I asked God, if there's something you want done, if there's someone you want spoken to, something is to be done. I don't want to be the one to do it, but I want to be here to let you do it through me. I am Katie Penn, and I'm excited to see what God does next.